Hey everyone, and welcome to today's video. So today's video will be the final part of my YouTube series in which we talk all about printing digital paper collections. And to end the series, I will tell you the overall printing costs, and then of course we can finally answer the question if printing digital paper collections can be cheaper than buying physical collections for our mini albums or scrapbooks. And when it comes to the costs for printing, then of course we have not only to consider the prices for the papers, which I already told you in the last video, but we also need to look at the price for the printer, which is a one-time purchase in most of the cases. And then also the main factor for printing is of course the costs for the ink. So before I tell you what it would cost you to print your own digital papers, I actually want to give you some tips on how to actually save ink so that you can of course reduce the costs a little more. And these tips are of course for making interactive mini albums. And they work the best if you're using my digital mini album planner, which I created specifically for digitally designing your albums and printing your papers. So if you're new to my channel, let me just quickly show you the kind of albums I craft so that you can then follow along my tips. By interactive mini albums, I mean that I include a lot of different interactive elements, so flaps, pockets or belly bands, and then I also like to include different closure types such as swing closures, magnet closures or Velcro closures. And for making these albums, I actually use a mix and match system, which means that every time I make an album, I'm choosing my interactive page styles from a collection of 50 different interactive pages. And this way I have created so many different albums for any theme or occasion, so you can find a ton of project shares on my channel. And then you can also find tutorials for all these interactive page styles on my channel, as well as for all the basics such as how to make the album cover, the hinge and the basic pages. And along with these tutorials you can also get my cutting guides and templates, which makes it really easy to work with the system and make your own interactive mini albums. But for more information on how exactly this system works and also what you would need to make these albums, I will just link my information video in the top corner right now, and then of course you will also find the link in the description box. So now let's have a look at the first example of how I saved some ink on this interactive page style. So this is my interactive page style number 40, and as you can see it includes this beautiful booklet, so you can actually open this up by opening this little flap using a magnet closure or a snap closure or a Velcro closure, and then you have a couple of pages on which you can add your photos. So for this page I have to print the background, which is this blue dotted paper, and then I also have to print this 4x6 inch paper with the flowers on it, and then another paper piece for the closure. So what I would do, and you can easily do that by using my digital mini album planner, is I would actually not print the part of the background paper which you can't see anyways after adding the interactive element to it. And this is actually something which would bother me when using physical paper collections as well, because you could totally use this 4x6 inch piece in the middle of the background paper. But of course it wouldn't be easy to cut it out, but when you're printing, that's definitely something to keep in mind for saving your inks. And this can actually be done with most of my 50 interactive page styles. So a lot of these page styles do have interactive elements glued onto a paper so that you no longer see the pattern of the paper, so that this is where you can save up some ink. And this can also be done to spots in which you want to add frames or photos to. And then if you don't add your photos or interactive elements to the middle of a page, then you of course can just print the strip of paper you actually need. And this is something which you could also do with a physical paper collection, or you could, with printing, of course, also print your photos along with the pattern paper. And to further save up some ink or actually physical papers as well, I also had another look at my measurements and changed them a little for some of the page styles, because for example on this page style here, there's really no need to print the whole background in 8 by 8 inches when you can just print two little pieces to actually cover what you would see in the background. So now let's get into detail of what it would cost you to print your own digital papers and actually compare it with the costs for physical collections. So for most of the physical paper collections by popular brands such as Echo Park, American Crafts, Carta Bella or Simple Stories, you would have to pay around 16 euros if you're getting the whole collection kit. And most of these collection kits include 12 different pattern papers in the size of 12 by 12 inches, and these are mostly double-sided papers. And then you would also get a sticker sheet along with the collection kit. So the price for a single 12 by 12 sheet would be €1, and some of the online shops I like to purchase at also sell those pattern papers individually. Now, I mainly make albums in the size 8 by 8 inches, which means that my pattern paper for the background pages is 8 by 8 inches and the album cover can be a little larger. But for those pages, I would actually have to cut down my 12 by 12 inch paper sheet to different sizes of pattern papers. And as you can see, I can only get one 8 by 8 inch pattern paper out of this 12 by 12 inch sheet to add to my album pages. And then I also get 3 more pieces, which I can totally use on my interactive elements. So 2 of them are in the size 4 by 6 inches, and then I have another one in the size 4 by 8 inches. So let's compare that with the costs for printing. And I first want to talk about printing with original Canon inks. And Canon inks are definitely a little pricey, but yeah, I started with buying original Canon ink, and I actually got the whole ink set for my printer, which is the Canon IX 6850. So again, if you haven't watched my previous videos, I already talked about the printer I got. And I actually got the value package including the extra large inks. And that's definitely something I would recommend you to do, because they are of course cheaper and you can definitely reduce your costs by using the extra large inks. And this set includes 4 different inks, so you get the black ink and then the 3 colors magenta, cyan and yellow. And this printer also requires you to get another extra large black ink. I'm actually not sure why that is that you have 2 black inks. But when looking at the supply levels after doing all my test prints, I noted that this additional black ink actually hardly got used, so I actually will exclude it from the costs of printing. And to be able to actually tell you the prices per A3 sheet, I actually used up the whole ink set and I noted down every single sheet I was printing. And this was only for the colored sheets, so sheets on which I printed pattern papers or photos. In addition to that, I actually printed a lot of black and white text sheets as well, but these I wouldn't note down. So for the value package, I paid around 60 euros and I was actually able to print out 65 colored A3 sheets. This means that it cost me 90 cents per A3 sheet using these original Canon inks. But of course, this can just give you an idea of the cost. It might be different for you so that you are able to print more A3 sheets or less A3 sheets, because it really depends on the colors you're printing. But I do have to say that I actually noted that all of my 3 colors inks actually run low at the same time. So I don't know. So yeah, but in case you're printing one color way more than the others, it might be that you have to change this one ink sooner than the other inks. Now this price is for an A3 sheet, and keep in mind that you really don't have to print the digital papers in the sizes they come in. So you don't have to print in 12 by 12 inches, even though you could of course fit that onto the A3 sheet. But instead you can be completely flexible and add all the papers in the sizes you would need them to be in for making your album. So this means that on an A3 sheet, you can, for example, print two 8x8-inch papers, which you could use on two different album pages. And then you could also print some smaller pattern papers, such as in the size 4x6 inches. So definitely keep that in mind when looking at the overall costs per A3 sheet, but we are not finished yet because we of course have to add the costs for the paper, the printer and the digital paper collection to the prices of inks per sheet. And as said, I already made a video for this series about all the different papers I like using when printing digital paper collections. So if you haven't watched it yet, make sure to go and watch it, especially if you're interested in the costs for these different paper types. But I can tell you that the papers I like using cost you about 5 to 80 cents per sheet. Adding those costs to the price for printing, then it comes to a price of 95 cents up to €1.60. So these would be the costs you regularly have when printing your digital papers using original Canon ink. And I would say that is really not bad if you compare that to the prices for physical paper collections. So even if I'm using the most expensive Canon matte photo paper, I actually don't really pay more than I would pay when using physical papers. I mean, it might depend on how you look at it, but for me, when using a physical paper collection, I would definitely use the 8x8-inch paper I get out of a 12x12-inch sheet. But then for the smaller pattern papers out of this sheet, I would use some of them, but I would also end up not using them in my albums and actually being left with these scraps. So yeah, to me, one A3 paper sheet is worth like two physical paper sheets. And then instead of paying €2 for two 12x12-inch sheets, I only pay €1.60. Or if I'm going with the cheaper paper, I only pay 95 cents. But of course, you also need to keep in mind that you have to get a printer as well if you don't already have one. And for me, the printer I got was €200. So yeah, this is a one-time cost factor, but for me, I have to say that I plan on printing my digital papers in the future a lot, so that it's really worth it to get this printer once, and then at the end, it still will be cheaper than buying physical paper collections. And then another cost factor for each album you make would be the price for the digital collection kit you get. So again, I really like the brands Ecopa, Cartabella, Simple Stories, and American Crafts. And for all those brands, you can actually get the digital paper collections for a price of €5 up to €25. But these collection kits can of course be used for more than just one album. So depending on the papers you're choosing for printing your digital collections, as you can see, it can be much cheaper than buying the physical collection, but you can reduce the costs even more. And that's if you are using non-original Canon inks instead of the original ones. And non-original inks are really so much cheaper that you can actually save a lot using them. So what I did is, after I used up all my original Canon inks, I then got some non-original ones, which I'm currently using. But so far, I cannot really tell you if I will be able to print as many A3 sheets as I did with the original Canon inks. But what I can tell you is that the results, so the print results, look exactly the same. And I wasn't really expecting them to look as good, but again, I only did a couple of prints so far with these non-original inks. So of course, it might be that but with the time, the print results get worse. But for now, I'm super happy with how these inks print, and of course, I will let you see for yourself. So here are the results. You can see the original Canon ink being used on the left test sheet, and then on the right side, there is my test sheet printed with the non-original inks. So I'm really happy with the results, but I want to mention here that it might be that you can get some issues when using non-original inks. At least that's what I read. So it might be that your printer is not accepting the non-original inks, or that you actually get worse quality than using the original ones. But that didn't happen for me, so yeah, as I said, I'm super happy with the quality, and also my printer was accepting the inks just fine, just as it would with the original ones. And when I looked at the price differences, I really had to try it out because, as you can see here, it is only 10 cents per A3 sheet. But that's, again, just if I am able to print as many sheets as I was able to print with the original Canon ink, which I'm just assuming at this point. So it's an estimated cost for you to give you an idea, and I will, of course, keep you updated. So I will probably just write an update in the description box and also in the comments in the future. But assuming I can print as many sheets, then printing your own papers is definitely a lot cheaper than buying a physical collection, even if I were to use the most expensive Canon matte photo paper. So you would be able to print your pen and papers on an A3 sheet for only 15 cents up to 80 cents. And I think that's absolutely amazing because not only is it cheaper to print your own papers, but also there are so many other different reasons for why I love working with a digital paper collection and printing my own pen and papers. So I want to end this series with all the reasons of why I love printing and working with the digital paper collection so much. So as said, saving money is just one of the reasons, but then you would be much more flexible when using a digital collection. For example, if you're loving one of the older collections by these brands I mentioned, then it might be that you're no longer able to get the physical products for this collection, but you're totally able to get the digital collection still. So I, for example, absolutely fell in love with the Alice in Wonderland collections by Echo Park 3 years ago, and I actually searched the whole internet to get some of the physical products. But I wasn't really able to find any, so it made me so happy to finally get the digital collection and actually making my Alice in Wonderland album. And then you can also use a collection as often as you want. And of course, you could also get the physical collection again if it's still available, if you want to make another album. But having the digital collection just gives you this flexibility of doing as many albums and projects with this collection as you want. And then something that would always bother me with the physical collections is that, of course, with every collection kit, I at least got 1 or 2 sheets I didn't like that much. And then with the physical papers, I sometimes would get some extra sheets of the papers I really love in the collection. But to be honest, it's always hard to really estimate how many sheets you will end up using when making an album. But using a digital collection and pre-planning my albums with a digital mini album planner, I can actually use these patterns I love as much as I want, and I actually know exactly which papers to print at the end to make my album. And I'm actually able to print them in any size or format, which I especially love for the journaling cards included in the collection. So sometimes I really want to use a journaling card in the size 3 by 4 inches on a 6 by 8 inch interactive element. And with a physical collection, I wouldn't be able to use this journaling card in a larger format, but I could totally do that with a digital collection. On top of that, you're also able to change the scaling of the pattern papers, which I really love because sometimes for me the patterns are just too small, and I really love that I can make them larger and use them like that. And talking about flexibility, I absolutely love that with the digital mini album planner, I am able to be creative from anywhere. So as long as I have my laptop or iPad with me, I can design a whole album without actually having to be in my craft room. So not only can I sit on the couch and watch a TV show while crafting, but I could also be on a vacation and actually finish the album about this vacation before I come back home. Another aspect I really love is that you can actually save a lot of storage when crafting with digital collections, because at least for me in my craft room, most of the storage is used for all the different paper collections I got. And not only do you have to store these paper collections, but you most likely also have a lot of scraps you want to store as well, because we don't want to throw them away. But I really love that with the digital collections, I do not have any scraps left. Another big factor is that using the digital mini album planner actually saves me so much time. So for example, I no longer have to wait for my physical collection to arrive, but I can start crafting immediately after purchase. It is also much easier to actually plan the structure of my albums with all the different interactive elements. So again, I'm using a collection of 50 different interactive page styles, but I'm of course not using them all in one album, but instead I do have to choose and mix and match these page styles. And it's so easy to do when working with my digital mini album planner. Another thing which is much easier to do digitally is to actually try out some paper combinations by simply using drag and drop until I'm fully happy with my decorations. I can also try out the placements of all my ephemera pieces and stickers. And especially if I want to layer my stickers, I really find it helpful to pre-plan that digitally, because that's much easier than laying them out on your table. What you can also do when using the digital mini album planner is you can already plan the placement of your photos, and this also saves you so much time when actually finishing up your album. And one main reason for that is that you no longer have to measure your photos, and you also don't have to actually print your photos in these like standard photo sizes, because with my interactive elements and interactive page styles I created, there are so many different photo sizes to use, and I absolutely love that because you have smaller interactive elements with photos and then larger ones. Yeah, but it can be a little bit tricky with printing, but not with the digital mini album planner. With the digital mini album planner, you can just drag in your photos wherever you want them to be placed, and then once you have printed them out, they're exactly in the sizes you need them to be in. And printing all the photos and pattern papers in exactly the sizes you need them to be in also means that you no longer have to look at the measurements when cutting them down, which also saves you a lot of time. Okay, so now let's talk about the biggest reason to me for why I think that printing and using digital paper collections is so much more fun than buying physical ones. And that, of course, has to be that you can be much more creative. And when I say more creative, what I actually mean by that is that there are almost no limits to what you can do when creating a beautiful mini album. Because you would be able to actually customize an entire collection to fit any theme or occasion you want to do your album for. And that's something I love so much, because there are so many beautiful collections, and sometimes I have seen a collection which I would really have loved to use for, let's say, a wedding album, but then I'm looking at the journaling cards and they don't really fit with the wedding theme. And with the digital mini album planner, you can easily fix that, because as I said, there are so many creative possibilities when working digitally and then printing your own papers. So for example, could you change the journaling cards which come with the collection? And especially with the AI tools in Canva, it is very easy to do. So you could, for example, just grab the text and then either remove the text or change it to another one. And for changing the text, Canva actually will tell you the closest font to the font on the journaling card, which is very great, because then you can decide on a font or like different fonts to match the whole collection and to match with the whole album. So as you can see, for this album here, I used one of the beautiful Flora collections by Carabella, and I absolutely love these collections because they have a lot of different floral patterns, and then you can actually use them for so many different themes or occasions. And what I did here is I used this collection to make a Mother's Day album. But not only can you change the journaling cards which are included in the collection, but you could also create your own journaling cards to match the collection. And the best way to do so is by actually using the stickers included in a digital collection, but you could also use some stickers which are included in the Canva library. And the Canva library is really amazing. So there's almost nothing you can't find there. So you could just type in, for example, wedding, and then you get a bunch of different graphics and illustrations to use in your albums as well. But I actually love to stick with the collection items I have, and with all the digital collections there are so many stickers you could then simply arrange to make your own journaling cards. And then, of course, you could also add some text to the journaling cards you're creating yourself, and you could also match the colors of the collection very easily with the color picking tool. And yeah, I really love creating my own journaling cards. I think that is a lot of fun, and it gives me so much flexibility to, as I said, make an album for any theme or occasion. What I also really love to create myself when working with the digital mini album planner are those basic patterns. Because I really love to include basic pattern papers along with the more like busy patterns in my albums to actually break them down. And with basic patterns, I mean patterns like stripes, dots, or plates. And what I did is I created some templates which I included in the digital mini album planner, and they can be easily customized by actually changing the colors of these templates to match the collection. And color matching is actually another of these great features I love when working with a mini album planner, because I can not only match the colors when creating these basic pattern papers, but I could also use this feature for creating solid papers as well as changing the colors of the text I want to use in my albums. And then with the stickers included in the collection, you can of course use them not only for creating your own journaling cards, but you can also add them to your photos or to your pattern papers. And when I use them, I sometimes would just print them out along with the photos or pattern paper so that they're actually printed onto the photo or the pattern paper. And then sometimes I really like to use these stickers as actual stickers, so the same way I would use them in a physical collection. The way I do that is by actually using my electric die cutting machine, my Silhouette Cameo, along with the digital mini album planner. And this way I can just plan the placements of my stickers in my album, and I don't really have to care for the sizes of the stickers. I can do them in any size I want them to be to really fit the design of the page I'm working on. And later on I can just transfer them to my Silhouette software and prepare them for print and cut. I also love using my die cutting machine for actually cutting out all these frames and texts and shapes I want to use in my album. So when designing my mini album planner, I made sure that this would work very well with the use of an electric die cutting machine. But that definitely doesn't mean that you'd have to own a die cutting machine. So if you don't have a die cutting machine, you can still use this planner. These are just some extra features I really love using when creating my albums. So as you can see, there are really a lot of different reasons for why I love working with the digital collection. And now that I tested my printer and all the different papers, I can really say that I don't see myself using physical collections as much in the future. And with that being said, I want to end this series, which I really enjoyed doing, even though it was a ton of work and a lot of research I had to do. So if you enjoyed watching this series and you got a lot of information out of it, then I would really appreciate your feedback in the comments down below and your thumbs up for this video if you liked it. But before I close out today's video, I want to let you know that I'm currently doing a sale in my Etsy shop. And this is the perfect deal for you if you now want to try out working with a digital collection for making interactive mini albums and using my digital mini album planner. Because right now it is 50% off, which is definitely the biggest sale I have ever done in my shop. And that's because working with the digital mini album planner has brought myself so much joy over the last months. And I'm really thankful for those of you who got the planner already and for all the positive feedback I got on it. But of course, I would love for it to get used and enjoyed by so many more of you. Because I honestly think that this is definitely the best tool to use if you want to make interactive mini albums using digital paper collections. But for more information on this digital mini album planner and what you can do with it, I would highly recommend you to watch my information video. In this video, I will also go through the different purchase options because this planner is available in different bundles. So you can find it linked in the description box down below as well as in the top right corner right now. And with that being said, I will now end this video for today and I would love to see you in my next one. Bye!